I'm Frances Rampey. I'm from Wilson Community College, which is about 45 minutes east of Raleigh, North Carolina. And we're a very small community college. I am going to be talking about flipping and adding concepts from MOOCs into your traditional blended hybrid courses. How many of you guys are already doing some flipping currently? Most of you. So some of this is going to be big review for you, but I'll get to something interesting hopefully. So what the flip? When you think about flipping, what comes to your mind? First things, just shout them out for me.
What stays in, what goes out, pretty much.
Okay. Do you think about active learning? Students being participatory? Participation? Student engagement, because that's one of the goals, is to be more engaged with students. Collaboration. The instructor is a guide instead of the guru in all knowledge. Educational technology, because that does play a big part into developing the pieces of your flipped instruction. Open access. Learning anywhere. MOOCs are massive open online courses, and the biggest thing that I take from these for my flipped classes is interaction, social learning, and compacting instruction into small segments so that they can do it anytime, anywhere. They can finish the entire lesson on a bus ride. The flipped model should look something like this. Students prepare to participate outside of class. Then you have activities where they're applying their concepts in class. And then after class, they check their understanding. So that should be the full cycle of learning in a flipped class. And then you see why it's flipped, because it's the complete opposite of what you normally see. So why change? Why did I want to change? So who can recognize this and knows what it's from? Anyone? Anyone? Well, I wanted to change because that's how I felt a lot of days when I was in front of my class lecturing and I would see students like this. Or even worse, on their phone. That's why I wanted to change. I was tired of feeling and sounding like my students thought I was him. Students were unmotivated. And if you don't have students who are this way, stand up, because we want to give you a round of applause. Students were only concerned with passing the class. They didn't care if they actually learned the material. They just wanted their grades so they could move on. We get a lot of students who seem to only want you to tell them what they need to know to pass the test. They have this test mentality. Is it going to be on the test? Then I don't want to know it if it's not. And they don't take responsibility for their own learning. Students do not take responsibility for their learning. If they don't learn it, they blame you or us. Nothing's ever their fault. Yeah, exactly. So I looked at flipping and MOOCing as an option because it promised that if you do this, then you're going to increase class participation. You're going to have students who are excited to come to class and learn. And students are going to be responsible. They're going to take responsibility for their own learning. That was the hope. And I said, well, my hybrid class will probably be the best class to try this out in because they already expect to have to do something on their own, and then I spend time with them in class. So that was the reason why I chose hybrids as my first attempt at flipping. Now I'm thinking of just moving all my traditional full face-to-face classes this way too. But to be effective, it requires a lot of preparation. It requires a lot more work on your part up front than you might anticipate at first. Failures. How many of you have seen this before? Because it's a meme that goes around quite a bit on the internet. Walt Disney, he was fired by a newspaper editor because he lacked imagination and had no good ideas. We all face failures, but we have to learn from them and move on. What may be a failure for some people isn't for everybody. So at first, I did not fully grasp what I would have to do for flipping. I thought, I will just have my students read the assignments, the textbook materials, review the PowerPoint online, and then come into class and they'll be ready to go. Yeah, how many of you think that worked? Students will not read unless you force them to. You have to make them. So I said, okay, I'll make them have all their quizzes for their reading materials due before class. And maybe then they'll read and take the quizzes and be prepared. Worked a little. They read enough to take the quiz. Basically, they read while they're taking the quiz. So that still did not work effectively. And there was not a lot of online involvement. Students were reading and taking their quiz, and they really were not interacting with me or each other online, just doing that. So I decided, well, I'm going to have to do something a little bit different. So then I did have some successes. Students were really excited about the group activities I did do in class. And they would actually prepare better if they knew I was going to have a group activity because they didn't want to let each other down. They don't care if they let me down, but if they know everybody else in their group is going to expect them to know what they're supposed to know, they'll read more. So when I started using my in-class time for group activities and hands-on labs, they started preparing more because they didn't want to let each other down, that was a big success. So taking in what I have learned from this. So after my first semester, I learned that it takes time to fully plan and create a flip model. I realized that my lectures and my reading materials don't need to be just the textbook and PowerPoint that the textbook provides. That I have to take and break down the content into smaller chunks and assess that for understanding immediately after the students do that. And then in class, I have to have reinforcement activities that encourage student interaction, instructor interaction with students, and encourage them to do something with what they've read and learned. The biggest thing I learned is that at the beginning of class, when I do my syllabus, I have to put all of this down in my syllabus so students know what to expect. The first time I gave a quiz before they came to class, they freaked out on me. They were like, how dare you give a quiz and you haven't even talked about it? So now, at the beginning of the semester, I have laid out in my syllabus and on my first day of class, I explained to them why I'm doing what I do, how it's your responsibility to read the material, and the quiz is to check your understanding of the material. And that seems to work a little better. Some of them still at first are like, can't you just lecture and we take a quick test? There's some who just want it that way. Don't make us think. That's how they act. So I got some guidelines up here, and the first thing is that you have to generate interest. And what I found works for this is at the end of class, when they're getting ready to go on to their next assignment of online reading or review, I try to find something that will spark their interest in what they're going to be studying. So a short video, it could be a graphic from the internet, something that's going to spark their interest so that they're actually excited about reading whatever you have posted or watching your video that's posted. Hold students accountable. This is where you have to have grades because you have to force them to be accountable at times. So I have to set deadlines for the components now. And I don't just do one deadline online. I do 3 deadlines a week. They have a deadline for their pre-assignment. They have a deadline for whatever we do in class that they have to turn in. And then they have a deadline for their follow-up review. So every week they have to interact 3 times with the content online. multiple methods of delivery. I use videos, I use podcasts, I use tutorials that I find online, short reading articles or things that I find online. I try to break it down into small components or chunks, as I call them. So when I'm looking at what I want to cover for the week, I pick out like the 5, no more than 5, of the top topics from that chapter or lesson. For each of those, I try to find something interesting, a video, content that takes them no longer than 5 minutes to go through, to read or view. So they got 5 sections of 5 minutes, so 25 to 30 minutes of what they have to do for content-wise, absorption. But I break it down into 5 chunks, no more than 5 to 7 minutes per topic. I have a short quiz after each activity or video that they're doing online on their own. And then I also post a discussion forum for each of those for students to interact. So they're interacting before they even come to class. And both of those have deadlines set before they come into class for their class meeting. And then in class, I do what they consider now the fun stuff. They get to do group assignments, and they actually enjoy it, which surprised me, because I'd gotten a lot of, oh, no, we don't want to do that. But now they're producing things. I teach everything from systems analysis and design to game development. So it's a broad range that I teach. And they can produce things using Show Me. So they create, in groups, they create tutorials that then I can use the next semester for my flipped instruction. So you're actually taking your students and having them create materials for you to use in the future. So that works, and they're excited. They're like, you mean other people are going to see this? I said, yeah, other students. So you want it to be good. What do you think you need to know about this? And they create it. TED Ed. How many of you are familiar with the TED Talks, at least? How many of you have used this website? They have it down to a science, and it's really awesome. It's free. You sign up for an account. It's very streamlined. And if my slow computer will go to it, I'll show you guys who aren't familiar with it what it looks like. They have a ton of lessons that are already created for you to use in a flipped setting. You can easily create one by adding any YouTube video that you want. And they have made it so that it's extremely easy to use. I will go into just a random example. So let's see, what do you guys want to learn about today? We can find something in here for us to learn about, I'm sure. Let's pick from what we see. Which one did you see? The science of spiciness? Yeah, let's look at that. Why not? That would be good. So you see this little let's begin part? This is where you summarize what it's going to be about. You get to add this when you're creating your own. Then students will see the video that they can watch. And we can go through and watch it if you want. Okay. Hopefully the streaming won't be too slow.
Why does your mouth feel like it's on fire when you eat a spicy pepper? And how do you soothe the burn? Why does wasabi make your eyes water? And
It's sort of hard to hear.
is the spiciest?
Don't have the best speakers.
Let's back up. What is spicy? Even though we often say that something
Can you hear it at all?
is not sour. Instead, what's really happening is that certain compounds in spicy foods activate the type of sensory neurons why you start to sweat and your heart starts beating faster. The peppers have elicited the same fight or flight response with which your body reacts to most threats. But you may have noticed that not all spicy foods are spicy in the same way. The difference lies in the types of compounds involved. The capsaicin and piperine found in black pepper and chili peppers are made up of larger, heavier molecules called alkyl amides, and those mostly stay in your mouth. Mustard, horseradish, and wasabi are made up of smaller molecules called isothiocyanates that easily float up into your sinuses. This is why chili peppers burn your mouth and wasabi burns your nose. The standard measure of food spiciness is its rating on the Scoville scale, which measures how much its capsaicin content can be diluted before the heat is no longer detectable to humans. A sweet bell pepper gets 0 Scoville heat units, while Tabasco sauce clocks in between 1,200 and 2,400 units. The race to create the hottest pepper is a constant battle, but 2 peppers generally come out on top: the Trinidad Moruga Scorpion and the Carolina Reaper. These peppers measure between 1.5 and 2 million Scoville heat units, which is about half the units found in pepper spray. So why would anyone want to eat something that causes such high levels of pain? Nobody really knows when or why humans started eating hot peppers. Archaeologists have found spices like mustard along with human artifacts dating as far back as 1,000 years ago, but they don't know whether the spices were used for food or medication or just decoration. More recently, a 6,000-year-old crock-pot lined with charred fish and meat also contained mustard. One theory says that humans started adding spices to food to kill off bacteria, and some studies show that spice developed mostly in warmer climates where microbes also happen to be more prevalent. But why we continue to subject ourselves to spicy food today is still a bit of a mystery. For some people, eating spicy food is like riding roller coasters. They enjoy the ensuing thrill, even if the immediate sensation is unpleasant. Some studies have even shown that those who like to eat hot stuff are more likely to enjoy other adrenaline-rich activities like gambling. The taste for spicy food may even be genetic. And if you're thinking about training a bit to up your tolerance for spice, know this. According to some studies, the pain doesn't get any better. You just get tougher. In fact, researchers have found that people who like to eat spicy foods don't rate the burn any less painful than those who don't. They just seem to like the pain. Remember, when it comes to spicy food, you're going to get burned.
Good choice. That was a good video. That was a really good video. Okay, let's see if I can get over here to see. Maybe I'm not in the right place. Okay, my screen will not go far enough over with the presentation because I've got like this big black box around what's actually presenting, so you can't see. On the right-hand side of the screen, they have a next section that they usually have are questions, quizzes. You can create your own quizzes for the videos you find on YouTube and put in here. You can add multiple choice, true, false, discussion questions into that quiz. Then they have a section for more information. For that, you can add links to more resources about the topic. I really wish I could get over there. Control A.
Control minus. That was zoom out, just zoom out initially.
Control what?
Control minus.
Not working on this little bitty computer. Here. Okay, get to it. Aha! It's at the bottom because it automatically adjusts like the smart semantic web stuff. Okay, so they have added questions. Hers are short answer. So they're not multiple choice. And to submit, you have to have an account, which means your students will have to have an account for it. But she has a set of 7 questions here for you to answer at the bottom. So using what you learned about how spice works, what do you think the best way to cool your mouth off after eating something spicy would be? Peppermint, yeah, something menthol, or something that the pepper spice will bind to, usually. Something like fat, milk. That's why they say milk is good.
So how are those answers then given to the instructors, or the results?
When you have an account, you can log in and see who's answered what. It's not necessarily graded, and for this, I would probably use this as a participation grade. And then they would still have something in, we use Moodle or Blackboard that's actually graded. It's not the best, but I really like the way they have the format. And I would love to see something like this integrated in something like CourseMate. Take a note. And then for Dig Deeper, this is where you add your additional information or resources. So these are all links that you can go to, the students can go to. And then Discuss is where you can actually add a discussion question. I just think that they have a really good organization and layout for it that's already set up for you. I like the fact that you can add any YouTube video you find. So if you have textbook publishers who create videos on a YouTube channel, you can now go in and add that, add your own questions, your own interest. So something like this is really, now, what would make it ideal is if you had grades attached to it. That's the one thing that's lacking. And I will give you that. That is the one thing that is lacking. But when I saw it, I was like, wow, that's really streamlined, and they've got it all set for you. Another big key thing is engagement. You want to encourage students to interact both on and offline. And you need to interact with your students on and offline. So tools, I have that. It will take you to if you scan it, it should take you to a list of tools broken down by these categories for you. I can also pull it up for you in a few minutes, but there's some video creation tools that I go over that I've found that are free and useful for helping to create and edit videos. There's some podcasting tools I've found, some presentation tools, and some communication tools that we'll go to in just a few minutes. This is very small, but I found it and I received it in an email last night. So I'm like, perfect timing, right? This is from the Flipped Learning Network, and it's like an organization or group about flipped learning. Well, they've come up and created their 4 key things about flipped learning. FLEP, or FLIP. Flexible environment. Students need to be able to choose when and where they learn. So you want videos or things that they can view on their smartphones. A learning culture. Your flipped learning model should shift instruction to a learner-centered approach, and the classroom and class time should be dedicated to exploring topics in greater detail. Intentional content. You have to continuously think about how you use your model and how it helps students develop a conceptual understanding. And then being a professional educator, which means you observe your students, provide them relevant feedback in the moment, assess their work, connect with each other, which is what we're doing now, right? So we're professionals because we are connecting and adapting and learning. So this came out last night, like I said, in an email, and I was like, well, it's perfect. I'll just add that at the end. Now, I am going to open up my resource guide for you. Some of these you may already use. In fact, I'd be shocked if some of you don't use some of these already. And really? That's what I get for borrowing a computer from my security department. Stuff's not installed. There's a threat. There we go. And Word will work. So some video creation tools, Powtoon, it lets you do that animated cartoon style. Plotagon, and when you get this, I also gave this to Cengage, so they should be able to make this available with the presentation as well from the download site that they're doing. So these are all clickable links. Plotagon also does animation style, and then Digital Films does animation style. Code Baby is more about, is like an avatar, so you design it to look like you and it's talking. Students like it. I don't think it's childish because we all enjoyed the cartoon we just watched about chili peppers. It just grabs their attention. For editing regular video that you do of yourself, Pixoral is good. It accepts multiple formats. Right now they are running a free 1-year teacher account. Overstream, you can add subtitles to any online video, which is really good if your college or your campus is concerned about ADA compliance at all. Capsules allows you to create videos, photographs, music, blogs, and documents. So you can include all of that into like a little video stream. And Majesto's the same way. Yeah, I've sent this as a separate document, and they said that they should be able to make it available with the presentation. Video quizzes. Blubber lets you add questions to any video clip. So if you don't want to use the TED site, Blubber's an option. And then TED Ed, which I just showed you. For podcasting, Audacity is the standby free tool for recording voice. Evoca lets you record your voice through a smartphone, or if you're having a Skype conversation with someone, say you wanted to interview a professional in the field through Skype, you can use Evoca to record your Skype conversation without having to pay for the Skype subscription. I find free ways around everything. Screen capture tools. There's Awesome Screenshot. It allows you to annotate and share your screenshots. Jing, it goes one step further. It lets you record your screen movements, as does Screencast-O-Matic. For presentation tools, I'm not a huge fan of long PowerPoints. As you can tell, mine was very short today, like 15 slides. Prezi is really good. It's cloud-based storage. You can share it with people. It forces you to be brief with your PowerPoints or your presentations. Zentation allows you to take a PowerPoint presentation and synchronize it to a video of you giving an instruction at the same time on a screen for free, similar to what Camtasia does. But it's a free tool. PresentMe just allows you to add voiceover to any type of document, PowerPoint, a Google document. So if you are teaching apps classes and you want to add voiceover instruction on how to do things as you're doing them in the document, you can use that to do so. Novio, it also does what Zentation does. It allows you to do the side-by-side video in PowerPoint. And then for some online quizzes, quiz creation tools, there's Test Modes that is graded, Quiz Me Online. Students can actually use this one, and some of your students may already use it. It allows them to create flashcards that they can then share with other classmates to help them study. And I've encouraged students to do that. They like working together that way, as long as one person is not doing all the work. Zuno WebQuest allows you to add videos and pictures for interactive quizzes, so you can create quizzes that students have to click on different parts of the image. And Yakapaka does quizzes and graded lessons, and then it gives you analytical tools for you to look at results and analyze what parts they're not getting based off of that for free. It's just wild that these things are available for free now. And then we have collaboration tools. Today's Meet allows for synchronous communication chat room. If you are like me and you're using Moodle, The chat feature in Moodle does not work that well on low bandwidth. So we tried this and it works a little bit better. TitanPad allows people to work on document creation together. So sometimes I'll let students do this for their group assignment. They'll go in and work on creating something together. Wigio does virtual meetings. You can have a calendar for your virtual meeting. You can have polls posted. And then Remind 101 is something I use because our campus is still in the dark ages. Our student emails are still group-wise. And our IT professionals refuse to open up the ports that are necessary for them to be able to get their emails on their smartphones. Yeah. So with Moodle, if we send out an announcement to the class, it goes automatically to our student email. Well, if students aren't going in and checking that. So Remind 101 allows me to set up a group, a class. Students enroll in it with their smartphone. They never see my cell phone number, but I can send them text messages to their smartphone from me, but then they don't reply back to my own personal phone. So I found that allows me to avoid students calling me on my cell phone at 1 o'clock in the morning.